Even if you're a fresh graduate, as long as you have the drive, the passion, the willingness to sacrifice and suffer for these things, you will be able to create a business out of it, start a business out of it, and become an entrepreneur. Next question again would be from Patrick Miguel. What are the top 5 skills you would advise a newly graduate to learn to thrive in the future to be successful? First skill, communication. Communication is super important. How you communicate with people, will you be able to engage them? And communication doesn't mean talking. It doesn't mean speaking. It doesn't mean na nagsasalita ka lang on stage or nagta-type ka lang, marunong ka mag-chat, marunong ka mag-formulate ng words. That's not communication. You know how communication starts? By listening. You have to learn the art of listening. I know that you guys know I have the podcast, Leadership Stack, and we're on Spotify. We have a lot of episodes already. If you guys are wondering what makes a really good episode, it's when I listen to the people I am interviewing. Most of the time, I have guests. And most of my questions actually stem from them saying something brilliant in their answers and me taking that answer and formulating another question from that. And hindi mo kaya gawin yon if you don't have the ability to listen well. So great communication is key. One of the key skills for you to be successful in life, not just as an entrepreneur, maybe even as an employee. But you need to learn how to listen first. That's the key to great communication. If you make the other person feel like, oh, this guy really understands me, then that person would be more open to listen to you as well. And great communication happens in between. Knowing the words to say, knowing how to say it, hand gestures, body language, facial expressions, these are all secondary, important, but secondary. First thing you need to do is to listen. And how you show someone you're listening is you look them in the eye, you keep quiet, don't comment, and then you mirror whatever it is that they say. It could be, did you mean? And then you paraphrase it in your own words. That will tell them that you really listen to them. It's difficult for me to list the top 5 skills, no? Ang dami nito, but definitely communication is at the top of my list. Second thing that you need to learn to thrive in the future and to be successful, I think, is sales. Nothing happens until someone sells something. That quote is attributed to Henry Ford. The world doesn't revolve, the world doesn't go round until someone sells something. For example, what have I sold you guys here? I've sold you the idea that if you tune in, you're going to get something out of it. And that's what made you act and finally tune in. If a parent wants their child to eat veggies, the parent has to sell the child that vegetables are good for them. However, they want to make the product good, taste good, nasa sa kanila na yon. If you want to add more seasoning to the vegetable, nasa sayo na yon. Or if you want to force the child to do it, but you have to sell it to the child that this is good for you, why don't you try it out? Nothing happens until someone sells something. And sales is one of the oldest skills in history. It is one of the oldest professions in history, being a salesperson. You cannot be successful if you cannot sell. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, you may be a product person or an inventor, you still have to learn to sell your invention to someone who will invest in it and make it improve and iterate it until it is market ready. Whether you are a businessman, an employee, an inventor, an idealist, you have to learn how to sell. If you don't know how to sell, success will be ever elusive. Mahirap makahanap ng success sa buhay pag di ka marunong magbenta. Maybe the third one would be the ability to accept criticism. In short, humility. It's hard to hear people say bad stuff about you, things that you need to change. That's how it is as human beings. Mahirap talaga eh. But if you keep rejecting that, the chances of you improving is very small. Because the easiest way for you to know your weaknesses and blind spots is usually from how other people see you. Kaya nga siya blind spots eh. Because you don't know. You don't see it. You don't see that this is how I talk. This is how I correct others. This is how I do things. And there may be some things that are wrong in that, but you don't see it because you're blind to it. And the easiest and best way to see it is when other people correct you. But if you're not humble enough to accept correction, all you're going to be doing is defending yourself. And it's tough when it becomes a defense party. You have to learn to accept it and make solutions to change. That it will still be your blind spot. It will still be your weakness. So mahirapan ka talagang i-improve yon. It's easier to improve strengths than to improve weaknesses. But you have to still improve that nonetheless, at least to a certain level where it's acceptable to a lot of other people. People who cannot accept correction, what happens to them? They don't get along well with other people because they don't improve. But people who are able to accept correction and improve, those are people who get ahead because they're likable. The fourth skill that you need to be successful in the future is to delay gratification. You have to learn how to delay gratification. You cannot do things now when you want it, when you feel like it. Mahirap yon. The idea of pay now so that you can play later is real. The idea of play now but you will have to pay later is also real. If you keep playing now, and the now is usually when you're younger, when you have more energy, when you can network better, and you have to pay later, what happens is usually you end up poor. Success is very, very hard to find if you're a play now, pay later person. But if you're a pay now, play later person, you put in the grind, the hard work, the hustle because you're younger. You can endure more. You can go the distance more. Then the pay later would be super small na. And the play later would be very easy enough for you. You can play a lot because you paid now. Yeah, it's true that you're older when you get to play, but wala ka ng stress. Wala ka ng masyadong iniisip because you paid it now eh. So I'll tell you guys a story. When I was younger and I was in college, I was computing the potential salary that I would get in my first few jobs, probably. I also projected that maybe I'd get promoted in X number of years, would get this much salary with the taxes and everything. Life did not look very great. In fact, it looked bleak. Kasi when I computed it, maybe I'd get to buy my first car at 35. Maybe I'd get to buy my first house at 45. And maybe I would also be able to get married somewhere in my late 30s. Just because I don't have the money to do it. What I did was pay now and play later during that time because my startup years, I would work 16-hour days pretty much non-stop. So medyo napabayaan ko yung sarili ko, yung katawan ko during that time. But now, 10 years later, I'm 32. I'm able to achieve a level of success that would only be in my wildest dreams. At 25, I got married. I was able to buy my first car at 23. I was able to buy my first house and lot and pay for it by 31. These things for me are a dream. In fact, for me, it's still surreal. No, hindi ka pani-paniwala in Tagalog yung mga na-achieve kong mga bagay. And that's because during that time, I learned how to pay now and play later. Because you have to pay. Whatever the case is, whatever you choose, you'd have to pay. It's either you pay now and play later or play now and pay later. And playing now and paying later is going to ruin your life and you're going to end up poor. The fifth thing for a newly graduate to learn to thrive in the future, to be successful, and you have to let me say this because I'm a man of faith, I'm a born again Christian. I think one of the skills that you need would be to have a daily relationship with God. That is one of the secrets that I always say is right in front of you, and I keep saying it, but people don't follow it. It's mind blowing. But really, that is something that is super necessary for life. There are a lot of promises in the Bible. If you read the book of Proverbs, if you don't know where Proverbs is, nasa gitna yun ng Bible. Katabi siya ng Psalms. Marami doon, it talks about money, success, debt, and talks about personal finance as well. So if you read the Bible, if you learn to have a relationship with God, or even if you just read the Bible, the book of Proverbs, you actually learn a lot of things. And these things will help you to succeed in life. So for me, that is a skill. I would consider it a skill just because not a lot of people do it. Just because not a lot of people invest time in that. They would invest time and money and effort in their personal growth, in their public speaking, in their personal finance management, in their insurance, but they don't invest in their spirit. They don't invest in their soul, which I think is a very real part of us and is something that everyone should invest in. Again, from Cedric, what advice would you give to fresh college graduates who are aspiring entrepreneurs with consideration to the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic? Well, if you're a fresh college graduate and you want to be an entrepreneur, there is no real reason why you shouldn't be. Because right now, the market is super disrupted. And with disruptions come opportunities. Because suddenly, the way things were, the way things worked, doesn't work as well anymore. It doesn't work at all. And there are a lot of ways that you could change that. There are a lot of ways to go around that. There are solutions that you could provide, but it does take a lot of drive. It does take a lot of passion, the willingness to suffer for something, to sacrifice for something. It takes a lot of that to be an entrepreneur, whether you're a fresh grad or whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, maybe even 50s, because there are people in their 50s who start businesses and they're entrepreneurs as well. It doesn't matter what age you are in, it doesn't matter if you're a fresh grad. What matters is, can you see those new roadblocks, those disruptions in the market, and can you make solutions out of them that people are willing to pay for? Because if there is a demand in the market, such as, for example, e-commerce became a big hit. Why? Because people can't go out to the places where they used to buy stuff. Groceries, wet market, it is not the same. When you go to the groceries and the wet market, I don't know about you guys, but here in BF Parañaque, medyo mahirap because we had to have our Q pass and there's some sort of color coding with the traffic in the wet market. Now you can only go every Tuesdays or every Wednesdays, something like that. And so there's a lot of, guess what, online groceries that popped up. They made it easier for people to just order what they needed from the groceries and the wet market online. Cloud kitchens started popping up because wala sarado yung mga restaurants eh. So, saan ka kakain? You still have that taste for eating out. You still want to eat out. You still want to order good food, or maybe you find it difficult cooking at home. Maybe no one cooks at home. Then how are you going to eat? Or you only know a couple of dishes. Then cloud kitchens became a boom, and suddenly people start ordering a lot from these cloud kitchens. Again, even if you're a fresh graduate, as long as you have the drive, the passion, the willingness to sacrifice and suffer for these things, you will be able to create a business out of it, start a business out of it, and become an entrepreneur. I think that the pandemic is one of the perfect storms actually to start your own entrepreneurship journey. It is difficult, but even if it wasn't, even if we weren't in a pandemic, entrepreneurship is still difficult. There is no way to getting around it. So I think this pandemic is the perfect storm for you to start your own business actually.